It has been 24 hours since free agency was opened up in the NBA. And let me tell you, a lot has changed. I'm going to go over every single free agent signing, every trade that we've had in literally the past 24 hours. And we're going to look at it from each team's perspective. And we're going to talk about what are these teams doing? How are they improving? How are they getting worse? I am super, super excited about the things that have happened in the NBA over the past day. It has been absolutely awesome. You could even tell the dog is super excited. I mean, look at him. Look at him just laying around, lounging. He's just so tired from all the news. Okay, that did not take long for the dog to leave because, I don't know, maybe he doesn't like the lights. Maybe he doesn't like me talking. But we're going to talk about the biggest stories. We're going to start with the biggest stories in the NBA. And in my opinion, we're going to start with the biggest winners so far. And that is the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets lost in 7 games to OKC in it wasn't the Western Conference Finals. It was the second round. Okay. They almost beat them. It was a very, very close series. And all of a sudden, we thought that maybe the Nuggets weren't going to really be contending. A lot of people didn't see them making any big moves or anything like that. But yesterday, they traded Michael Porter Jr. to the Nets. And they shipped off a first-round pick from an unprotected 2032 first-round pick to the Nets alongside Michael Porter Jr., which makes sense. Because if you want to get off that big contract, you're going to have to give away a pick. You just are. But they got back Cam Johnson in return. And as a result of that trade, they were also able to sign Bruce Brown to a 1-year deal. Bruce Brown and Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. in a first-round pick is an absolutely incredible deal. The Nuggets are looking like they really want to contend. They're really going to sit here and put their best foot forward. They also signed Tim Hardaway Jr. to a vet minimum contract, and they traded Dario Saric straight up for Jonas Valanciunas, which I think is an incredible deal. I'm not really sure why the Kings were willing to do that. I think Jonas Valanciunas is way better than Dario Saric, but I mean, it is what it is. It's a great deal for the Nuggets. And now all of a sudden they've revamped all their depth that they were missing during the playoffs. Because we all saw that Jokic was playing a ton, Murray was playing a ton, and the bench was not. I personally feel like the Nuggets have made the biggest difference. They came out of nowhere. No one was expecting any of these moves to happen. People were just kind of expecting them to roll with the same exact roster that they had last year and hope that it was good enough with a new coach. And instead, they made huge, huge moves. They got off of the Porter Jr. contract, which was an absolute disaster for them. And they added a ton of depth, which is something that they desperately needed. The next team I want to talk about is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I would have talked about the Bucks first and said that they were the real winners of this offseason, except that there's a little bit of a caveat to that. So the Bucks were supposed to also not really do much because Damian Lillard ended up getting hurt. He tore his Achilles, I believe, and he's not going to come back until he's 36 years old. He's 34 right now. He is obviously a huge loss for the Bucks, and nobody was really expecting them to contend. However, things are a little weird in the East, okay? The Eastern Conference is kind of up for grabs because of things like Lillard's injury and Tatum's injury and Tyrese Halliburton's injury, and a lot of the teams that were contenders in the East this year might not really be there contending next year. The Bucks made a huge move and they waived Damian Lillard, which blows my mind. They stretched the remaining $103 million left on his contract to basically be able to pay it over the course of like 5 years. Maybe it was 113 million, excuse me. They stretched 113 million over the course of 5 years. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's about $22 million that they're going to have to pay each year for the next 5 years towards Lillard's contract. That's basically just dead cap space. That is a huge problem for the Bucks. They made some big moves to improve the team despite that absolute tragedy happening to Lillard. However, they're going to have $22 million per year less in cap space than any other team. I really don't know if that was the right move, or should they have just given up this season? I do get why they did it. I do understand. At the same time, I'm not sure that it was a great move, but the Bucks are making the best of it. They ended up getting Miles Turner on a 4-year deal as a result of waiving Lillard. Miles Turner ended up agreeing to a $107 million deal with the Bucks. That is absolutely insane. Miles Turner has been on the Pacers for a decade. They just made it to the finals, the NBA finals. They just won the Eastern Conference Finals, and they somehow let go of the one guy that has been consistently there on their team for all these years. He wanted to go back to Indiana. He had no interest in going elsewhere. And Indiana basically told him, fuck off. I don't really know what the deal was, but they let Miles Turner go to the Bucks for free. And the Bucks were able to do that because they waived Lillard and stretched the remainder of his contract. I think that that's a great move. Miles Turner is going to be incredible next to Giannis. I get the Bucks' logic here. They waived Lillard in order to not lose an entire season of Giannis Antetokounmpo's prime. I can completely respect that. I completely understand that. And they got Gary Harris for a 2-year deal. Gary Harris, very nice. I think that, was this a vet minimum? I'm not sure. The numbers are not here on the contract, but Gary Harris is a great addition for the Bucks. They re-signed Kevin Porter Jr., Bobby Portis, Taurean Prince, Jericho Sims, and Gary Trent Jr. This is going to be a team that's sneaky good and that nobody is really expecting much from the Bucks after they lose Lillard. Then they go and they sign depth. We saw this happen with the Celtics. The Celtics won because they had all that depth, and this is what teams are trying to do now. Teams are more focused on building depth, rather than grabbing every superstar player that they can. And the Bucks are looking really solid for that. Let's talk about the Pacers real quick. Let's follow up on what we talked about with the Bucks. The Pacers let Miles Turner go. It's a very odd first move, and it's the only move that they've made so far in the last day since free agency was opened up. I don't know what to think about this. It shocked me that Miles Turner was gone. It's stunning that they let him go. That was kind of the heart and soul of that team. Is it because Tyrese got hurt? I'm not sure. Are they just going to say, fuck it, we're going to do a soft rebuild until Tyrese is back? Are they going to trade Pascal Siakam? Because there's been some talk of that now. There's been a little bit of rumor spreading that maybe Siakam is on the block because the Pacers are just going to kind of give up on this season and try to contend the year after. It's kind of crazy. I do think that they could still contend even without Tyrese. This is a very, very good team, but maybe now without Miles Turner, that opportunity, that door has closed. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on what the Pacers are going to do over the next, couple months in this free agency. The Houston Rockets, man, they have been making big time moves. They made the trade with the Suns for Kevin Durant. I know people have probably covered that. a ton, and I'm not going to go over that too much. Why not add Kevin Durant to the team if you're getting rid of Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and a couple of first rounders plus some second rounders? It's a really solid deal for the Rockets. Kevin Durant is, I think, 37 now. He's not the same player that he once was, but still an all NBA player. You know, Kevin Durant is still a superstar in this league, and he's going to a team that has depth, that has really great players, that has all-star players, and that had one of the best records in the NBA last year. This is a team that now is suddenly trying to compete with the Thunder in the West. And I don't know, they kind of have the roster for it in a sense. They signed Fred VanVleet to a 2-year extension that gave them the space to do some other things, like get Clint Capella back in a 3-year deal, get Dorian Finney-Smith to a 4-year deal. Those are 2 incredible acquisitions to go along with their Kevin Durant trade. And they also got Jabari Smith Jr. to agree to a 5-year extension, which was really great for them, and Steven Adams to 3 years. And I don't know. I think the Rockets are going to be very scary. I think in the West right now, this is the only team that has a chance of competing with the Thunder is the Rockets after their moves here in the past day. Another sort of surprise winner of the past 24 hours has been the Hawks. Instead of being a lottery team, they want to kind of gear up and try and take over this wide open Eastern Conference. With Tyrese down and Jason Tatum down and Lillard down, I think the Hawks think that they're going to be able to contend, and maybe they can. They signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker to a 4-year deal. They got Luke Kennard on a 1-year deal, and they got Kristaps Porzingis in a 3-team trade. Those are 3 very strong additions to the Hawks. The only problem is I didn't feel like they really had the core that is going to be able to contend. I wasn't thinking that they were a couple pieces away. It sort of looks like the Hawks think that that's the case. You know, Trae Young was apparently really pushing for them to get Kennard and Alexander Walker. They let Clint Capella go. They let Karis LeVert go. They let Larry Nance Jr. go. Georges Niang, Terrence Mann were part of the Kristaps Porzingis trade. I'm very interested in what the rest of the offseason is going to look like for the Hawks. I think that they do have a chance to compete if they just add another piece or two. Do I think they're going to be NBA championship contenders? No, I don't. But I do think that they could be, you know, potentially a top 5 seed in the East, depending on what else they do and what the other teams end up doing in return. But interesting attempts from the Hawks to sort of contend. Speaking of contenders, let's talk Celtics, okay? The Celtics were supposed to just be washed. This was supposed to be a dead season for them. They were going to lose everything. You know, they don't have Tatum. They're not going to be able to stay under the second apron. So they end up trading Drew Holiday. They lose Luke Cornett to the Spurs in free agency, and they trade away Kristaps Porzingis. They added Georges Niang. They added Luka Garza. Josh Minette agreed to a 2-year deal, and they traded for Anthony Simons. Do I think the Celtics are real contenders? Maybe. It's kind of weird because they sold some of their biggest names, and their biggest name is out with an Achilles injury. However, I look at these moves, and they look to me like the Celtics are still trying to contend and be a force in the East. Are they going to be as good as they were this past year? No, probably not after losing their best player, but they still have a good, solid chance to make the playoffs, maybe even make to the second round if they can find a way to make the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, it is Boston. This is a team that has a history of success. I think this is just really interesting, and I wanted to touch on this next because we all thought that they were selling. We all thought that they were done, and it looks like they might not be. The Cavs were the #1 seed in the East during the playoffs, and they have made a few tweaks to the roster over the past day or so. They got Lonzo Ball in the trade with the Bulls the other day, and then they signed Larry Nance Jr. They let Ty Jerome go to the Grizzlies in free agency, and Isaac Okoro was traded in that deal for Lonzo Ball. Nothing huge changes here for the Cavs, but I don't know that they really need to make any big moves. You know, this was the #1 seed in the East. They were very, very solid. They kind of choked in the playoffs a little bit, but, you know, that's sort of the makeup of a young team. Although you could say, you know, the Thunder were a young team and they ended up winning the whole thing. The Cavs didn't look like they were ready for the big stage. So the playoff experience is only going to help them for next year. And they got a guy in Lonzo Ball that maybe isn't the greatest player anymore, but he's a guy that's had big potential in the past, and injuries have unfortunately hurt him a lot. Now, maybe he's going to have a full healthy season. He's not going to be the guy that needs to be relied on. I think this was a really great move for the Cavs. I think it's a very low risk play where you really only had to give up Isaac Okoro. I think this was a great move for them to pull in Lonzo Ball. They don't have to change much on the team, but he might make a world of difference. Those were the biggest stories, in my opinion. Then we're going to talk about my New York Knicks, because I think the Knicks have made two great moves so far. They didn't need to be big moves. The Knicks ended up signing Gershon Yabusele for a 2-year deal, $12 million contract, including a player option. This is a big guy, a center that the Knicks desperately need to play alongside Mitchell Robinson. He's going to help take the pressure off of having Mitch play too many minutes. And he's also going to give them a big man off the bench that's going to make a huge difference. He's a tough player, a great player that scores and plays pretty okay defense. I think Yabusele was an amazing steal for Leon Rose and the Knicks. And they also are going to end up signing Jordan Clarkson. I believe that deal is all but done. Maybe not officially because he was waived. So they got to wait a few days for the waivers to clear. But Jordan Clarkson is going to be added to the Knicks. This is a guy that can score. He's going to play off the bench. They got him for the vet minimum. The Knicks suddenly have filled up all their depth issues in just a day with two big time signings. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little. Maybe it's not all their depth issues. They probably need to sign like one more player or whatever. But now, instead of just being a team that had 7 playable guys and then a bunch of other guys that weren't really as great, but you can use them in a pinch, the Knicks now have 9 strong players from their starters to their bench, and hopefully we'll have a 10th by the time the offseason ends. So those are the most important stories of the last 24 hours in NBA free agency. I was going to go over every single transaction, but honestly, it's just not worth it. I don't want to drag this video out any longer than it needs to be. We talked about the most important moves. I want to know what you think of NBA free agency so far. I want to know, did your team make good moves? Let me know in the comment section below if you think that I missed some big moves that were really good, some teams that did really well in this past 24 hours. I love this shit. I'm going to be honest. I almost love the offseason, the NBA offseason, the MLB offseason, almost as much as I love the NBA season. You know, it's super fun to see what teams have hope, to see what moves everybody's making, to see how things in the league change and shake up. Let me know in the comment section what you feel is the most important trade of this past 24 hours. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you on the next video.